Okay, so I should mention one of the big influences on me in the mid 70s was John Michell and his work. You know, The City of Revelation, View Over Atlantis, 12 Tribe Nations, The Science of Enchanting the Landscape. So, who was it that asked now about the ley lines?
That was Luke, I
Okay,
believe.
Luke. So, I don't know if you've ever read View Over Atlantis, Luke. It was published way back in 1969. I don't think I read it until 1973, but this is just a quote from early in the book, page 9. And this was my first exposure to the idea of ley lines. So this is the quote now. One hot summer afternoon in the early 1920s, Alfred Watkins, who, by the way, was a Freemason, was riding across the Bedwardine Hills about 12 miles west of Hereford. I wonder if that's where Hereford cows get their name. On a high hilltop, he stopped, meditating on the view below him. Suddenly, in a flash, he saw something which no one in England had seen for perhaps thousands of years. Watkins saw straight through the surface of the landscape to a layer deposited in some remote prehistoric age. The barrier of time melted and spread across the country. He saw a web of lines linking the holy places and sites of antiquity, mounds, old stones, crosses, old crossroads, churches on pre-Christian sites, legendary trees, moats, and holy wells stood in exact alignments that ran over beacon hills to cairns and mountain peaks. In one moment of transcendent perception, Watkins entered the magic world of prehistoric Britain, a world whose very existence had been forgotten. So that was my first ever exposure to the idea of a ley line. However, and I've kind of told this story, so I don't necessarily want to repeat it, but maybe a lot of people hadn't heard it. I was hired to build a boat barn next to, on the floodplain of the Chattahoochee River. It was one of the heirs of the Coca-Cola fortune. And I was doing a lot of work for him that summer of 75. He had procured 15 telephone poles from somewhere. And he wanted me to see if I could come up with use those telephone poles to build a boat barn. And I said, oh, I imagine I, can come up with something. So I went down to where the building site was, and I figured that what I would do is there was 15 of them. So I figured, okay, I'm going to build a barn I'm going to set the poles into the ground, and I'll do 3 rows of 15 each. And then I'll basically build the barn on that. And I actually have a picture here. I probably could pull it up in a second of when I was building that damn thing. A true story, by the way, one that I'm not just making up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a share screen here. So here it is. This is like 1975. And this is the pole. This is the first stage of the pole barn. And what you see here is 3 rows of 5 telephone poles each. So, and I'm just beginning. That's me up there in the rafters. So I'm just beginning to hang this structure on top of these 15 poles. Well, so we had the poles, and I found out that Ma Bell, who was the telephone company at the time for this area of North Georgia, had an auger truck, and they would come out, and if you paid them $8 a pole, they would come out and dig a hole and set the pole for you. So hey, I thought that's a pretty good deal. We'll do 15 times 8, and I'll call it, because that's going to be a heck of a lot easier than me digging all those holes by hand and then trying to set the poles. So I thought, hell yeah, let them come with their auger truck, and then they'll use their boom and they'll set the poles. And that's exactly what they did. However, when they came out the day they came out, the official Ma Bell truck comes up, with 2 guys get out, and they're wearing, the khaki uniform and all of this. You can see actually the road is on this picture. The road is up here to the right, and it went kind of up the hill, and they parked up there, and they got out of the truck, and then they stood by the truck. Then third person gets out, and it's this real tall, skinny guy wearing overalls and an old crumpled hat. And he's carrying something that looks like a violin case. He comes walking down the hill and he walks in. See, I had put a stake in the ground every place I wanted to have one of these posts set in the ground. So I had laid it out. I had driven the stakes in the ground. This guy comes down there with this violin case, and I'm kind of puzzled, like, what's this guy doing? And I think when he was here, I'm standing over here by the wood pile, right? And watching this guy come down and think, what is this? What's this guy doing here? And he pauses, and I think I probably had, see, I've got my sawhorses here. I think I had some wood or something up on the sawhorses, because he stops there, opens the case, and he takes out 2 swing rods. Now, anybody who's ever done water dowsing will know what swing rods are. Now, basically what they are is a way of you hold rods. For those people who know what water witching is, it was typically a traditional method of supposedly finding underground flowing water. And the traditional way was using, typically it was a forked hickory stick that was held, and it went into a V into a single place. And the water witcher, or also now called a dowser, would use that could detect flowing underground water. Well, what this guy had was nothing more than 2 of the old-fashioned automobile antennas, the telescoping kind with a little ball on the end. And what he had done is he had pulled it out and left about 6 inches within the outer sleeve. And then he had hacksawed off that. So he had about 6 inches, right, where he could hold it in his hand. It was about like this pen right here, if you can see the pen. He would hold it, and then outer rod was bent at 90 degrees, and it was free to pivot within the outer sleeve. And he had 2 of these in each hand, right? So he gets those, and then he goes and he walks over, if you look at my picture, he walks over each of the stakes that I had driven into the ground. And as he's walking over, you can see that the rods are just kind of gently oscillating, kind of back and forth like this. And then he's walking over each of the stakes, and I'm going, what the hell is this guy doing? And at first I'm like, I'm feeling sorry. Are these guys, is this like, are they pulling something funny on me here? Cause I'm just this young guy, barely out of the fool stage, but I was smart enough to figure out how to build this barn anyway. But so as he would walk across each of the stakes, he yells up to the guys at the truck, clear. Then he'd go over to the next one, clear. And over all 15 stakes, then he turns up and yells clear to the guys. Now, over here, if you look right here behind it, there's a garage there, and there's a driveway coming into the property, going down to the garage. So he walks back up the hill, and then there was an opening in the fence. He walks there, and the whole time he's carrying these rods. I knew from the work that I had already been doing there, we had put in an above ground swimming pool. You can't see it. It's in the background here on the other side of the house. So we had to find where to do our water hookups. So I knew that there was a water hookup, and I knew it came, from across the road somewhere, but I didn't know specifically where it came into the property, really. So he's walking, goes across the driveway, and he maybe gets halfway across the driveway. And all of a sudden, and I'm watching him this whole time, still scratching my head, he walks across the middle of the driveway. All of a sudden, it looked like somebody grabbed the ends of those rods, jerked them into an X, and then this is what I saw him doing. They were literally bending. They crossed, and then they were bending wow. As if somebody was
pulling down on the ends.
Yeah. And I thought, what in the hell? And, I had heard of water witching. There were water witches. I grew up in rural Minnesota, and there were water witch,
Yep.
But I hadn't never given it any thought. I had never seen it before. So then what he does is he starts coming from across the driveway, and he walked in a zigzag fashion. And every time, and what he was, of course, detecting was where the water main came into the property. And so as he zigzagged back and forth across that water main, every time he'd step over it, you'd see that those rods would cross, and it would look like they were under tension. And so he was able to trace out where the water main came in from the road down onto the property. So then he's coming back up, and I'm standing there, and I'm really quite mystified. And he
Did
goes,
you want to set him on fire?
"Who no,
Rick.
I didn't actually.
Okay.
I wanted to find out what the hell he was doing. What in the world?"
Lots of people in the chat are saying that they do this too, that they've dowsed before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then that's cool. That's very cool. Okay. So then he goes, "You want to try it?" And I'm like looking around, and I look at the guys on the truck, and I can see that they're kind of laughing, and I'm okay. Yeah, I'll try it. Completely unexpectedly, like not anticipating anything. I had him in my hands, and I stepped across where the water main was. And we were able to verify later, yeah, that was in fact the water main. The owner comes out there and goes, "Yeah, I think it comes right across the driveway here and goes down." And I said, yeah, we so anyways, I step across it, and it was like an electric shock. It was so surprising to me because I felt it. It literally felt like somebody grabbed the ends of those rods. And I was so surprised and startled over the thing that because I wasn't expecting anything. And, I've tried dowsing many times since then, and with some response, but never like that first time. I don't know what was different. Maybe it had something to do with my frame of mind. Maybe I was too expecting results or something later on when I did it, but it was that convinced me, hey, there's really something happening here. Right. So
yeah,
that became, I got interested in that, read several books on it, Christopher, who wrote a great book. I'll on the break, I'll grab it.
Was this your Javelin here, Randall?
My Javelin?
The car
right there.
Pretty cool.
Oh, no, that's
pretty hip.
Yeah.
No,
you
that's Rocky's
chunk of money for that. And,
that's my little brother, Rocky. He was the one taking the picture.
No, but whose car is that?
That's his.
Okay, it's his car.
Yeah.
Oh, so he, instead of like, you asked him, "Hey, can you take a picture of my construction site?"
Yeah,
he's like, "Yeah,
"Check
sure,
out
bro,
my
I'll do
badass
that."
car.
He backs his car up.
Yeah, exactly. Rocky. Hey. Well, yeah, you see the trunk is open. That's because we were using his trunk as our pickup truck.
Right.
Beer cooler.
Beer cooler. But yeah, so that was I would say that was a significant moment that day when I discovered that. And it was actually that led me into, about that time was when I was started reading John Michell. And that's where I first discovered ley lines and started, putting two and two together. And then that led me to Paul Devereaux's work, the Dragon Project, where he's associating ley lines with, patterns of energy in the landscape that is basically the result of the configuration of fault lines and ore bodies and the movement of underground water. So my thought then was that, and at that point, the phone company is relying on a dowser,
right,
to tell them where it's safe to drill.
Yeah.
Now, if it was just completely bunk and pseudoscience, I don't think they'd be doing that.
Right. It's weird.
Yeah.
They keep it they keep it quiet, right? We had the same thing with well drillers out here. Big water companies, they're coming out, they're drilling people's wells, and they show up with a guy who douses the area to find the spot to drill.
Yep.
And it's just, I don't know, it's like ignored, or it's like just, they don't tell you, yeah, we're going to bring our witcher out there to check for the water. But
well, it's funny because it sounds like even back then, the guys who were actually doing the work didn't really take it seriously.
Except that they do what those guys say. It's weird. It's interesting.
But yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's still big.
Well, I found out from acquaintances that served in Vietnam that, they were using dowsers to locate buried mines.
Oh.
I heard that from a couple of different people. I've never seen that confirmed anywhere, but I heard it, firsthand from peers of mine that served over there. Now, since then, I've attended meetings and given talks on the possible geological connection, for example, to the Appalachian Society of Dowsers. And they've hold, meetings every year. And let's see, it was in 95. did a presentation to the Appalachian Society of Dowsers, and then in Atlanta. And then the next year they had their national conference or gathering up in, and it was mostly the entire Eastern seaboard. Dowsers, there's like 200 Dowsers there. And I went, and it was entitled Dowsing for Discernment. And it was held at Warren Wilson College. And I went there. I got invited to go there and do a presentation. So we actually have recordings of 5 lectures that I gave over that weekend. And this was actually one of the very first places where I laid out the whole Younger Dryas hypothesis publicly. Yeah. So basically,
I like the sound of that.
I described the whole phenomena and put forth the idea that there were impacts into the ice sheet to cause the mass extinction. I extensively go into the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary event and the Tunguska event as analogs to help us understand what happened at the Younger Dryas. I don't remember if I actually was using the term Younger Dryas at the time, but I was placing the date of it as at 12,900 to 13,000 years ago. And that date actually came up from immersion and studies of the great year concept, which is what I encountered in reading the book Hamlet's Mill, probably, again, about the mid-70s. I would like to actually read a couple more quotes from John Michell that I think are relevant to this. This is now from his later book, 1991, called 12 Tribe Nations and the Science of Enchanting the Landscape. And he says here, and this is quoting, the first requirement of the ruling priesthood is to locate and occupy the naturally powerful centers of spiritual energy in the landscape. This involves the use of geomancy, meaning divination through the earth or earth magic. Now, this is what now would encompass what we talk about as dowsing. Through geomancy are discovered the most effective sites and designs for temples in relation to the spiritual energy field of the country as a whole. The many sciences which contribute to geomancy include astronomy and geology. The temples should be sited at natural meeting places between the powers of heaven and earth. This principle is now being recognized by archaeologists who have discovered in recent years that temples and old stone monuments in all countries are related to their surroundings in 2 ways, astronomically and geologically. So his work, I think, was pivotal. He's no longer with us, but his work was pivotal, I think, in really kind of peeling back several layers of the veil that obscured the archaic traditions that would have involved, I think, the mapping of the energy field of the entire planet at one time. I don't think that is really as far out as an idea as it might sound, because again, I think one of the hypotheses that legitimately put out that could be testable is the idea that there was an advanced civilization in prehistoric times. The advanced civilization may have not looked anything like our modern advanced civilization, and therefore the footprints and fingerprints of this civilization are much harder to discern, because if we're looking for analogs of our own culture, we might be missing. But clearly, to me, the universal system of moving giant stones and placing them according to astronomical sighting lines, it can't be some random, superstitious process. It's there's a knowledge at work there, and mainstream models of prehistory don't have any way to explain other than some kind of independent evolution. And you wonder, well, why would people in South America come up with this need to move 50-ton stones, coming out of the Paleolithic societies of hunter-gatherers, nomadic hunter-gatherers. Okay, maybe one exceptional culture, for whatever reason, would be motivated to move and erect giant stones in the landscape. But when you find it all over the world, now you got to go, wait a minute. No. There's something else going on here. And what Graham Hancock says is, and I have to agree with Graham, as I usually do, is that really what we're seeing at the dawn of history is, in effect, the end of something else. as much as it is the beginning of the rise of our own modern civilization, which traces back, to the first appearance of writing, in Sumer and that period of 4,500 to 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. The end of something.
Yeah.
That's a great way to say it. It looks like it's the end of something, and then our civilization shows up later.
Yeah.
Yeah.